Elephant in Main Street International presents Izindlovu FM. Izindlovu FM, where we empower our listeners. We discuss the hot topics. We confront the relevant issues. We ask the right questions. Be a part of the movement that is Izindlovu FM and help change the world. The power of unity, the home of growth. Izindlovu FM. Be empowered.
Hey guys, welcome back to Izindlovu FM, the Elephants podcast. And today we'll be continuing our talk about design thinking. Now, in the previous episode, we discussed design thinking and we more focused on empathy. Where on this episode, we'll be talking about prototyping and how to get there, what it takes. Please, we welcome back our guest, Seth Tamlin. How's it going, Seth?
Hello, ladies and gents. Hello, Chad. Nice to be back on the podcast again. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much for your time. So, in case you haven't watched the previous episode and don't know what we're talking about, it's an ideology and a process of achieving results that are 1, technically feasible, 2, economically viable, and 3, desirable for the user. To be a design thinker, you need to change the way you tackle problems and find new alternatives to creating options that didn't exist before. It's all about understanding the context of the culture of the stakeholders involved. So, Tamlin, tell us, what is prototyping to you?
Okay, cool. So thank you for the question. Thanks for having me on the show. So prototyping, what is it? I think before we get there, I'd also just like to maybe give our listeners or our viewers just a recap on design thinking, just before we jump into prototyping. So I think last time we talked about design thinking is designing in a user-centric way, really placing our users, placing our clients in the front and in the center, focusing heavily on what we call empathy. So if you look at design thinking, it can be divided into 5 different scopes, okay? Like we talked about last time, there's empathizing, there's defining, there's ideating, there's prototyping, which we want to focus on today, and then there's testing. Now, I might have listed a specific order there, but the order of design thinking is that there is no order. These processes can happen in parallel, they can happen at the same time. Prototyping can happen first, empathizing might happen last. There's no formula for design thinking as long as each of those 5 come into the fore somewhere during the design thinking process. But as we said today, we want to focus on prototyping. So really we would like to focus on what is a prototype and what is it all about. So if you think of the human brain, human beings are really, really visual people. I know I'm a very, very visual person. I like to look at things and see the beauty in them. On the note of beauty, please visit our Facebook page, You Are Beautiful, and see what's happening there. But what I'm saying is our brains, or 30% of our brains, are focused on being visual. So when we can see a prototype, the most important thing about it is that you can see it. When your client can see something, when they can view it, they understand what it's about, which is why we enjoy doing videos. We like to show people what it is that they will experience at Elephants within our products. We get them on calls, we show them what we're doing. It's very important that the client sees what we're doing. So that is what a prototype is all about, making sure that your client can see and feel and touch, and most importantly, just see what it is that we're doing, and they can understand what it is they're paying for, what they will experience. Chad, I hope that makes some sense. But from your side, what is prototyping to you?
Perfect sense there. And I really like how you took us through a bit of a journey of design thinking. As you mentioned, there are these steps, and it's not just one follows the other. At the end of the day, that's the beauty of design thinking. It's a way to change the game when it comes to innovation. And prototyping, as you mentioned, it can come in parallel to empathizing. And the whole idea behind prototyping is to fast track it so you can get testing done. At the end of the day, your user experience is what's really important. The second the moment you can actually prototype something, you can get it out to the client or to the public's hands, get some feedback. You have a better gauge to see where you are, what you can change, how you can make it better, and then implement it in the correct way. And I think it's a very important thing design thinking has brought to the fore, is how it's no longer a thing that it is form follows function. It's more that function now follows the form. So in prototyping, can you tell us why collaboration is so important when it comes to design thinking?
All right, so let's understand collaboration for a minute. The maybe some of the previous thinking or the older thinking of collaboration is that there's maybe a couple of geniuses in the world. There's one or two geniuses, like maybe an Albert Einstein, maybe a Steve Jobs. There's those specific geniuses that we find throughout the world. But what collaboration within design thinking says is that we should really honor the genius inside each and every person, inside each and every one of us. And maybe in some of my prior work experience, we find ourselves trapped under the weight of competition. Designers, design thinkers, they work in isolation. They compete against each other, seeing whose work is the best, whose is the most aesthetically pleasing, who brings the best ideas to the table. It's almost like a circus, just seeing who can be the best. But you're really placed under these enormous pressures of trying to perform, and then often you don't really produce the best work. You're almost suffering. So it can be quite stifling. But really what we see is that companies really need to focus and practice design thinking instead of design competing. That is really, really key. And this process obviously includes extensive research, but this really helps bring out the creative genius in each and every single one of us. So, I mean, I can go on a bit more if we have time, but really what I'm saying is that we all have genius inside of us, and collaboration really helps if you can bring out that genius in each one of us, because that's what collaboration is built for, is to bring out the collective genius instead of just having one person's point of view. You can have everyone's point of view, because I believe creative genius resides in each and every one of us ourselves. And by opening ourselves to other people's stories, no two people, if I tell you a story, every single person is going to take something different or hear something different from my story. So that's why collaboration is so important with design thinking, because when we design something, we're getting everybody's story, everybody's points of view. And that's why I enjoy working with elephants, because we have innovative ideas. We can listen to one another's stories, and we can, as humans, we all come from different backgrounds. And when we bring these differences to the table, the spectrum of creativity, of what can be possible, the spirit of possible, that is where boundless opportunities await. And if that isn't genius, or if that isn't collaboration, then I'm not sure what is.
100% there, Swifty. And as you touched on it, design thinking is about getting the genius of everybody. In typical sense of design, they would always leave the designer to work in isolation, as you mentioned. And the whole ideology of design thinking is to incorporate not only the designer, not only the user, but everybody else involved in the process, to have those different perspectives, to have those different insights. What you might see might not be something I see. As you mentioned, people take different things from different stories, or it's the same type of ideology that gets brought into design thinking, and how we need to encompass and work collaboratively, openly with everybody else in the same process to try and get the best out of it, and to be able to make sure you have an impact in what you're actually trying to achieve. It's all about adopting a designer's mindset and approaching the problems from the user perspective, and how does it create an environment to fast track these prototypes and to get the solutions quicker. That's what the bottom line is. So please tell us, how does this ideology create this environment and fast track the prototypes?
Okay, so basically to fast track a prototype, and how ideologies help in fast tracking prototypes is really what we see is that I might ask ourselves a question: just why should we use prototypes? I mean, here we are today talking about prototypes, but really, why should we use them? So I think there's three things. The first thing is that prototypes help us really to gain first-hand insights to how our users will interact with our products, how they will react to it, to understand the product we're designing. And just seeing an early version of the product, the prototype, really shows you how and if it will actually work in the real world where it's designed to work. Number two, we're going to identify any problems, any issues, any design flaws before it's too late. I mean, we can't go to a client with a flawed project, so this is why we have prototypes. If an idea or design is destined for failure, I would want to make sure I find out in the early stages. So we need to make sure that we expose all the weak or the unstable parts of our products long before they're in our clients' hands, which is why our products are so great and so innovative, because they've gone through prototyping fully before we put them anywhere near the hands of our clients. And then also, just thirdly, it helps us to make informed design decisions. We can't design where a certain piece of our event should go, or what kind of technology we need to use on that event, without making informed decisions. So we need to make sure that we just test a few versions of the prototypes and see which technology works best for which application. And like, no matter how thorough our research might be, many people find it really difficult to truly conceptualize a product until they have it in front of them. Like we talked about earlier, we like to see things. So again, just prototypes really allow us to refine, rework, and make improvements until we have a market-ready, a client-ready, a event-ready product. Chad, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, perfectly. I completely agree. So, as you're talking on prototypes now, it's all about the what, the why, and the how. Explain this in a real life context that you've experienced and how prototyping has engaged and bettered either the product or whatever you've been working with in your personal experience.
Okay, for sure. I know I might be jumping the gun here, but I don't know if you have this question in store for me, but I'm going to just talk about maybe one of our products that we prototyped quite a bit in the past. Is that okay? It was actually it was a product for one of our bigger corporate clients in the investment field. Yeah, let's say, well, it was basically a water-based sport, a very, very innovative sport, first in South Africa. And I suppose the main thing here about this prototype is this key thing that I'm about to tell you, especially for anyone of our listeners out there just really wanting to get into this creative thinking, design thinking, prototyping idea. This is key, what I'm about to say now. And it's these 3 words. The 3 words are just start, or just start building. So whatever design you have in your mind, just get out there and just start. That's what we did. We went to the water, went to our nearest lake, we went to our nearest ocean. What is that other thing called? I don't know. But we were just spent a lot of time on water and we just started building. So my message to you is just creating a prototype will help you to think about your idea in a concrete manner and potentially allow you to gain insights into ways that you can improve your idea. So just get out there, just start building. Your best bet is just to go out and just to make something. And once you've got that first thing that you've made, you then allow yourself to get feedback. If you've made something, you can get feedback. If you've made nothing, how can you get feedback? So that's my main message. And then there's 2 other points around. Actually, I've got another 3 points just around guidelines for prototyping and talking about our water sport. Once you've designed your first thing, don't spend now too much time trying to refine it and just like focus on the smaller perfectionistic areas. Don't spend too much time doing that. It's all about speed. You need to get your product to market quickly. So prototyping is about speed. The longer you spend building your prototype, the more emotionally attached, especially for myself, I like to attach emotionally. The more emotionally attached you can get with your idea, thus hampering your ability to objectively judge its merits. Hope that makes sense. But then I've got another 2 points for prototyping. Just remember what you're testing for. So all prototypes should have a central testing issue. Don't lose sight of that issue, but at the same time, do not get so bound as to lose sight of other lessons that you could learn from. And number 4, very crucial, build with the user, with the client in mind. Who's actually going to be using this product on the water? So let me go back to my example. We had our client, they had specific objectives. We said, let's build the most fantastic sport that you have never ever seen before. As I said, first in South Africa, we built it with that in mind, making sure that it didn't have to go too far in the water. But we built with the user in mind. So we tested it around expected user behavior, what they might do on the water, making sure it's safe. And we built it around the user needs, what they wanted and what they needed. And then we learned from the gaps. We ran it as a test within elephants before we sent it to our client or let our client do it. We learned from the gaps and we made expectations and realities match, and we improved on our idea. And when we finally delivered it, it was a great success. Chad, I hope that makes sense. But those are some guidelines for prototyping.
So, as you mentioned, it's just start building. So, as we went through the steps of prototyping earlier, it's prototype, then test, then reset. You do the whole thing again. You want to get out different prototypes. As you mentioned, it's about what the user experience is or the client needs are. We prototyped it in the beginning. As you mentioned, the client actually had certain specifications, and we decided, we put our design thinking caps on, and we exceeded the client's expectations by going above and beyond and collaboratively working out how could we turn this expectation of playing a sport on water and take it to the next level. And it began very simply, and it became something that was actually phenomenal. And then we were asked to redo that exact same experience the year after. And instead of just saying, okay, well, we've done it once, here it is, we went and prototyped some more. We took what we had, we put our design thinking caps on, we collaborated again, and we started seeing, okay, where can we improve? What can we do differently? Tell us, how did you use design thinking to overcome some of these challenges from its conception, where it all began, and how it's evolved now to our current state?
So why did our water sport work so well? Why did prototyping really enable us to run such a successful event, being the first in South Africa? So I think the first thing is that we had a controlled group where we really tested this product first. There was a specific location. We invited a whole bunch of people, different ranges of ages, and we really just got them onto the water and we got them to test this wonderful sport. We had challenges with the platforms that we would stand on to facilitate the sport, to play the sport. Those went through various iterations. But we really got feedback from all of these people after they played the first round of the game, and that feedback really encouraged us and helped us to refine and really revise this product into its best possible form, into where it is today. Chad, I don't know if you want to elaborate some more on that. I know you were also involved with prototyping.
So I think it was a great opportunity to prototype it first. As you mentioned, before even taking it to clients, we had the idea, we ideated. First we empathized with the whole situation. I mean, we're dealing with something we've never done before. Water sports was something Elephants has never been involved with in this type of manner, like designing something new, a new product like this. So we had to empathize with the situation, and then we ideated, we collaborated, we discussed our different ideas, we deliberated and started going into a bit of a design phase. And once we started putting that all together, we went into prototyping. And as you mentioned before we took it to client, we had our own little test group in St. Francis where we got a whole bunch of kids, bunch of adults to play the game. And we saw how it worked from the outside. We got to see, okay, what is working, what isn't working. That's a very integral part of design thinking, is to be able to take it to market, test and see, get that feedback, and know, okay, what needs to be changed, where to from here. And after that interaction with the test, we obviously were able to, okay, take their feedback, see what our observations brought to the fore, and make the necessary changes. And at the end of the day, it led to a product that the client was super happy with. They really loved it, but it evolved. It evolved from the first time to where it is today. And now it's safer, it's easier to move, it's structured better. We had the design. I mean, even though it's the last piece of the puzzle, the overall look of the blocks were just astonishing, way better than they were the first time. And that type of growth is where design thinking leads you to. I mean, innovation never stops. Innovation in this world, you cannot be stagnant in this type of realm. It's integral that we talk about it. We get this in our businesses. We are currently in a time of coronavirus. So how do we design think to get ourselves out of this? In our industry, personally, we do events that has to do with interacting with people, with clients, direct interactions. We have products that needs people to be on site. So what did we do as Elephants and put our design thinking caps on for this coronavirus lockdown situation?
Okay, absolutely. So we realized that business had fundamentally changed, and we needed to start really working together in a new way. So we decided to test out some of our products by doing our usual products, but doing them virtually. So we had people in the same room cooking for our Chef Masters event, but doing it virtually, showing us how they cook, how they really cook up delicious meals. Then we played some of our game show bonanza online virtually. We played minutes in a minute, seeing who could do tasks, who could fetch toilet rolls, who could drink a glass of water within 60 seconds the fastest, find items around their home. All of these things are prototypes. We basically tested how we would virtually run our product in the virtual world. And the prototype really took off, and we've actually doing it for one of our clients, I think, next week. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Again, we had to define what the actual problem is. What were the constraints? The constraints were, okay, we can't interact with our clients on the scale that we could directly anyway. We could not be in the same space or have the facilitation in the actual physical environment. We then ideated. We said, okay, what are the various options? How do we turn what we have virtual? We saw, okay, there's this platform, there's that platform. There's different ways to actually reach the same result. But at the end of the day, what is stable? What works? What will work for our clients? So we got through that very quickly. We prototyped. We did it with ourselves. We did it with other people. We found out what works, what doesn't work. And we tested. We got it done. We know what we need. And as you mentioned, we have our intervention next week. We're ready to roll with it, which is great. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you giving us a bit more insight into what it is design thinking is and how it works for you. Thank you very much again. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye, Swifty.
My last point is just remember, just start building.
The power of unity, the home of growth, is in Ndlovu FM. Be empowered.